We were talking about some different protests and stuff that went on. 2 of them in the 60s with the overall umbrella of the Chicano movement. So I'll talk a little bit about that.
What's a Chicano?
I'll explain it to you right now. This might be hard to believe.
Is it an anagram?
No, I'm pronouncing Chicago wrong.
The Great Chicago Movement.
Yeah, the Great Chicago Movement of Los Angeles. Bring back the Cubs.
Catalina Island's beautiful again. The Bears.
This might be hard to believe, but there are a lot of Mexican Americans in Southern California.
No, not my Southern California.
It makes sense seeing as, that we're Mexico for 20 odd years, and then they just threw America over us, and we're still here. It's Mexican Americans. You just attack Americans at the end of that. Not attacking the eye, though. Now the largest populations of Mexican Americans are in South Texas, New Mexico, and California, and we're all border states pretty much. But our own...
What about Arizona?
Oh, yeah, Arizona too, right.
Although they're not allowed there anymore.
Yeah, no, they're not welcome there. No, Arizona has made a hard stance on that.
It's the Trump of states.
And here I thought Florida was. No, it's Arizona. Florida's a nice Mark Rubio. I know nothing about Mark Rubio.
Except that he's Florida.
Did you know that our own East LA was the largest barrio in the country? And by the 60s, there were 100,000 Mexican Americans residing there?
Oh, my God.
I know, I didn't know that. If you're unfamiliar with East LA, anybody's not who's...
I was born in East LA. That's me doing drugs.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what that meant. East LA is bordered by Boyle Heights, El Sereno, the City of Commerce, and Monterey Park. It's that big sort of Texas-looking shape. It's upside down Texas, I think. The Chicano movement...
The sign of the devil.
The Chicano movement of the late 60s and early 70s were, as many people agree, spearheaded by Cesar Chavez, who led the United Farm Workers Union, who I promise we will get to in another episode. There's almost too much to do in this short little one. And Reyes Terrarina, who attempted in the 64-65 to regain land grants to the federal government and different land corporations that taken after the Mexican War.
Let's take a pause, because that name sounds like Tejuino. If there's anyone listening to this who has had Tejuino, contact us. We need help.
Questions.
We need help. Why? Why did you do it? We need help trying to describe this taste. And if you have tasted Tejuino and you like Tejuino, please stop listening forever.
No, I'm curious.
I am not curious.
You have the board. Fans of Tejuino, you have the board. Tell us what you like about it. Hey, I like coffee and lemonade.
In your hands. Coffee and lemonade. That sounds nice.
How does that sound nice? Okay, black coffee and lemonade. That's what I mean. Hard black coffee, lemonade.
If you put melted chalk into it.
Okay.
All right, let's get back on track. What's a Chicano?
So it's the mid-60s. Everyone's radicalizing. Mexican Americans were now becoming more political and socially conscious, and their shouts for improvements were beginning to get heard. Basically, the whole Chicano movement is a self-pride sort of thing. You're a Mexican American, and you're going to start taking pride in it, not only culturally, but how can you make it better for the community? That's basically what Chicano is. It is the term that they made up in the 60s to kind of umbrella everything.
Chicano is really a made-up term?
Yeah, it's a made-up term. It's not like...
Everything's a made-up term.
Thanks. Yeah, Hispanic is anybody from a Spanish-speaking region. Latino is any of the Latin American countries. Mexican American.
Wait a minute,
Chicano.
so Hispanic covers Central South America and Spain?
I believe so. And Latin America covers Latino is Latin American countries.
Mexico, everything from Mexico down.
With Brazilian language tied into it. What is it called? Oh, Portuguese, that's what it is.
No, it's Brazilian language.
Brazilian. Sorry, it's Portuguese.
You don't speak Brazilian?
Chicano was almost like a political statement about Mexican Americans that happened in the 60s. Okay. I believe I'm doing that right. The whole thing about the Chicano movement was just taking pride in brown pride, Chicano pride, all that stuff. It was about because they had been through everything that happened at Chavez Ravine, everything that happened with Sleepy Lagoon, police brutality. It was just about just being happy that you live in East LA and liking the culture and not being ashamed that you brought tacos as your lunch to school.
What's wrong with your hot dog, kid? Why is it all cut up with lettuce in it?
Why you got all those spices? Don't you want a nice bologna sandwich?
Where's your mayonnaise? How come you're not drinking whole milk?
Whole milk has whitened your skin. Oh no.
What happened to your skin?
So while everyone else, the Black Panthers and stuff, was radicalizing, it was time for the Chicanos to start taking action as well. There was a lot of youth groups that were coming up, and they
tried to join the Black Panthers.
They're like,
did you read our name?
I think that you might want to maybe start your own thing, because... And the specific goal of a lot of the youth groups was...
Malcolm X's.
I just made a really weird realization that Martin Luther Ray, which is Spanish for king, James Earl Ray was the guy who shot Martin Luther King, and Ray and King are the...
Interesting.
It's not The Chicano youth groups had a very specific goal, and that was to make a change in the education system in Los Angeles. Because among the ethnic groups of the city, the Mexican-American community had the highest high school dropout rate. Something like 1 to 4 would be dropping out, and the lowest college attendance. So they obviously saw that this was a big problem. It was affecting the way people prospered. So they if we fix this, maybe other things will start happening after that. Many people who grew up in these communities have agreed that they were being taught from a very early age to excel at laborer positions. They were pushed towards classes like shop classes and home ec. Keep your hands busy. No, you don't want to be a lawyer. It wasn't just a problem for Mexican Americans in LA. Chicanos had the highest dropout rates in the country. In 1960, the average grade achieved for Chicanos stood at 8th grade, compared to 9th or 10th grade for other non-white groups, and 12th grade for any white groups. The white groups.
Sorry.
Canadians, the other immigrants.
The worst ones of all. Raining down on us from the north.
Some syrup speed.
Faster than a speeding syrup. The Canadians. Dun, 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 dun.
Around that time, the per capita yearly income was a tragically low $968 compared to what the whites were getting, about $2,047 every year.
Again, sorry.
And the other non-white minorities were getting about $1,000 something.
So they were even lower than African American?
Yeah. Nationally, the Mexican American communities faced the daunting task of rising above the limitations set for them. So with the examples made by Cesar Chavez and Tejinas, student leaders began taking charge, assuming key roles in mobilizing their communities around the themes of pride in Mexican roots. Like I was saying, Chicano pride, brown pride, they were trying to push that forward and get everyone to mobilize. They wanted to build unity amongst Mexican Americans of all classes, both rural and urban, of all generations. Youth groups started after that. The Brown Berets were first organized in this area. I think that the only people who should wear berets are the green berets, the brown berets, and maybe Dizzy Gillespie.
And that whoever Prince was singing about. What about the Black Panthers? They look good in berets.
They do, don't they?
I've never seen a brown beret, so I don't know what it looks like. Do they actually wear berets? Or would they? Do they?
I saw a picture of them, but I don't remember seeing a beret, but I'm sure they do. They're the only people buying berets. They just don't look good. I'm sorry. Says the guy who's losing his hair and wearing a beanie permanently. Maybe I should adopt a beret.
You're losing a hair but growing a beanie.
Zing, 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 zing. Feel that? You feel that?
Does that one hurt? Coming shunning. Does it hurt you when I talk about your impending mortality?
As long as you still got hair down there, it's not a problem. The Brown Berets started in 1967. They were a group, kind of a militant group that wanted to...
Why
it was a play on Green Berets.
Well, I know that, but why are berets the symbol of militants?
I don't question it.
Ask a French mime.
So the Brown Berets started in 1967. That same year, David Sanchez, a teenage social activist, created an organization called Youth Citizens for Community Action, the YCCA, with the intention of fighting oppression and discrimination. Like I was saying, the Brown Berets were more of a militant group. Yeah, they're concentrated on social movement in the Chicano community, but it was, from what I can tell, a lot of fighting police brutality or bringing up issues of police brutality. Yes?
I'm just thinking that's the Village People song that didn't catch on.
A year later,
the M is the most fun part to dance.
2 C's. I will not be in this group again.
Are you serious?
The cop from the Village People was the one that beat them up.
He beat up the Native American while the sailor watched.
A year later, 1968, UMass started. The United Mexican American Students Group had formed a push for advancement for Chicano educational rights. There were 2 newspapers circulating regarding Chicanos as well, La Raza and Inside East Side. So radicalism was in, damn it. So it seemed unanimous in the community that action needed to be taken. Several activists came together to drop a proposal for better education. Yeah, the Brown Berets, UMass, other activists met up as well. Among them, as always pointed out, the Lincoln High School social sciences teacher Salvador Sal Castro. You had student leader Paula Crisostomo, and you had a college student Montezuma Esparza, who went on to make the walkout movie.
Name.
Me too.
Montezuma's
a good name.
That's a really good name. It's my favorite Knott's Berry Farm ride.
You won't get on it. I just like watching it.
It's too scary.
It's too scary for me.
He's gonna take revenge. I don't like that.
Revenge means death.
I don't need that.
I'm gonna sit on this bench with Charlie Brown and watch everything.
Come on, Chuck. I need some psychiatric help. Where's Lucy?
I got a nickel. Is she in?
The doctor is out. Walk out.
Together, they drafted 36 demands to put before the Board of Education. The demands focused on things like bilingual education, bicultural education, Chicano staff members, not just teachers, but also working in the administration office, smaller class sizes, which they wanted to do by building more schools in the area, better facilities, and an addition of a Mexican-American history to the textbooks that were already out. A very good set of proposals, so of course it was denied. Their needs were not met, so the group decided to hold student walkouts, or blowouts as they called them. Blowout!
I'm having a blowout!
Oh, you gotta go to the hospital for that. The high schools they decided on for the walkouts were Roosevelt High in Boyle Heights, Lincoln High School in Lincoln Heights, Garfield High School in East LA, Wilson High School in El Sereno, and Belmont High School near downtown, near the Tommies.
Ooh.
These were the schools that they pre-planned to have walkouts, but there was about 10 more that would also end up walking out or spontaneously, like Venice High and Jefferson High. Now, I always heard about the walkouts of the 60s, but I never understood their immediate impact, other than it being visually shaking. But the real threat of a student walkout was that the LA public schools are paid based on the number of the students that attend each day. So if you walk out, they don't get paid. So you hit them right in the wallet spot. Now, it was time to go forth and protest, but it was hard, seeing as almost all their meetings were infiltrated by plainclothes policemen.
Common theme. That's going to be coming up.
They're just shifty, these cops.
Why can't they always be wearing their uniform? Even have pajama versions that look like it.
My robe also has a badge.
My sleep boxers has a holster attached to it.
They're always falling down. My boxers need a belt. Pre-planned or not, doesn't matter, because the first blowout was not a regularly scheduled program of events. Although they had planned to walk out soon, the first walkout at Wilson High School in March 1968 was spontaneous, or at least premature.
A premature blowout?
I know nothing about that stuff.
No. Next
never,
topic.
Never happens.
Next episode. Episode over. Good night.
It happened after the school principal, Donald Skinner, canceled a student production of Barefoot in the Park, claiming that it was too risque for Mexican-American audiences. I can't even fathom what he meant by that.
But they're not ready.
Put
your
shoes
kids
back
are
on.
going to love it.
But it was enough to push the students out of school. 300 of them out the doors. School administration attempted to stop them. They used senior students to block the main exit, which I hope didn't count as an extracurricular activity.
It's an internship.
But the protesting students just used the auditorium doors instead. They just like, oh, whatever, block the door. They rattled the school entry gates back and forth. Inside the school was just another protest. Everybody was throwing books and fruits out the window.
Fruits? Where'd they get so much fruit?
Lunch.
The apples they were going to give to their teachers?
Exactly. And teachers were pissed.
How am I going to eat tonight?
How am I going to keep the doctor away? So then, once all this chaos was going on, the police and the press showed up. As some students were forced to return to class, many refused. They formed sit-ins. They continued to protest. They said they would not go back to class until the demands of the Chicano proposal were met. And with that, the Chicano blowout protest began. Boom, March 5th. What's that, like 4 days later? The following Monday, hundreds of students stepped out of Garfield, Roosevelt, and Lincoln High, protesting the...
Odie, John Arbuckle.
Lasagna. Whatever the mouse's name was.
Unfortunate Monday. We're walking out.
Garfield, Roosevelt, Lincoln, all had walkouts that day. They walked out saying, blowout, blowout. What do we want? A fair education that equally benefits all students. When do we want it? Decades ago. 2,000 students walked out of Garfield High between the 5th and the 8th.
My God.
With them, they carried pamphlets on education reform, which is so cool to hand out. The next day, March 6th, Roosevelt had another walkout. The principal tried to secure the gate, but the students climbed over it and into the arms of police officers who attacked them.
We got you.
Don't worry. Hit them. All this March Madness, which the authorities impolitely refer to as civil disobedience, was resulting in arrests and beatings of many young high school age protesters, which is crazy to think that high schoolers were getting beat up by the cops, but I guess it happens all the time. Luckily, they didn't stand alone. The student leaders and the staff activists, as well as the UMass and the Brown Berets, were guarding many of the protesters for this. March 8th, students at Belmont High attempted to blow out of class and onto the streets to protest, but the school became overrun with the LAPD, itching to arrest and beat students back to class. But the other schools were more successful. 10 to 15,000 students walked out that morning and held a rally at Hazard Park, which is near the county hospital. The closest school, Lincoln High, was a mile and a half away. At the rally, thousands of protesting students and activist organizations met in what was one of the first acts of mass mobilization by the Chicanos in Southern California, which is pretty awesome. So on March 11th, a week after the protests in schools not making any money, the LA Board of Education held a meeting that was attended by 1,200 people. 1,200.
That's what that means.
Which included students, parents, protesters, community members, activist groups. The first thing that was asked by the community members was that the protesting students receive amnesty for the actions, so the board agreed. Over the next month, they discussed the terms of the 36 demands laid forth by the Chicano activists' educational proposal. While the board saw the need for the changes that the group wanted, they told them that they didn't have the money to follow through on some of these. Some of the things they proposed were to build new schools, like I said, to reactivate closed schools, as well as changing textbooks. It seems like a reasonable defense to say, we don't have the money. I tell people that all the time. But it's not good enough to answer to students who are being pushed out of a proper education and have no chance at prosperity because of this. So student protesters did the signature move. They walked out of the meeting. Smell you later.
Are you bringing up my stink again? Please don't talk about how smelly I am right now.
I just can't concentrate.
Just to clarify, I do shower.
I shower in skunk smell.
I shower. My dog got sprayed by a skunk, and now I smell like skunk. Okay? Are you happy now?
My eyes are watering. I can't read this.
My eyes are shooting hearts out of them because I've got a peppy lip you for you.
I do not understand that you are a cat. I think that you are a fellow skunk.
You're a cat that walked under a paintbrush, and here I am to collect my dues.
So on March 31st, the last day of March Madness, 13 of the organizers of the walkouts were arrested on conspiracy charges. Apparently, it's a felony to arrange a disturbance of the peace and get in the way of the average school day functions. The 13 consisted of student and staff activists, members of UMass and the Brown Berets, and MAPA, which is the Mexican American Political Association, the publishers of La Raza, and other community organizers. It's the blacklist of the Chicano movement, except you can name names, and we didn't really care. We arrested everybody already. These 13 were known as the LA 13, and their names are as follows: Sal Castro, the teacher; David Sanchez, the student; Carlos Montes,
his wife,
Ralph Ramirez, Fred Lopez, Carlos Munoz, Henry Gomez, Montezuma Esparza, Eliza Risco, Joe Razo, Patricio Sanchez, Gilberto Olmeida, and Richard Vigil. Sadly, they came for Sal Castro and David Sanchez on prom night. Castro was to be a chaperone when he was arrested.
But if they don't kiss...
And Sanchez was
two Back to the Future references so far in this episode.
We will get them all in. How many do we do like every episode though?
Like at least 9.
Ronald Reagan?
He's coming. Just to be sure. The actor?
You can't do something like that to peaceful protesters and not expect a huge response from activists. People began immediately protesting and demonstrating outside of the Hall of Justice. But this time there were some heavy hitters out to protest with them. Black nationalists, Students for a Democratic Society, the SDS, Senator Robert Kennedy, and Cesar Chavez were all showed up. The Chicano Legal Defense Committee and the American Civil Liberties Union stepped in as their legal defense, which is pretty cool. There was so much steam built up to the protest of their arrest, but many look back at it now and they see that once they were taken into custody, the attention of the activists shifted from the education system to the release of the LA-13, which is a pretty sneaky move, because now it's like, oh, hey, remember what you were talking about? We don't. It wasn't until June that they released the Lincoln High teacher, Sal Castro. He was released on bail, walking out of the police station to 2,000 supporters who rallied outside. He wasn't able to return to the classroom to teach until October of that year, after months of protesters sitting in and doing other demonstrations. The focus seemed at that point to be splintered off into different causes, and without a unified effort in one area, no push was strong enough to make a change. Many now say that while it sent a powerful message to the LAUSD, the walkouts were unsuccessful in achieving their goals. But something that is positively to thank for the walkouts is they awakened a political consciousness to the Chicano community and made many aware of the problems that Mexican Americans face in the country.
Long-term goals.
Long-term goals, exactly. I think the 3 I did, you kind of see like it be built to a certain, like they awakened it and someone else came and did a little more and someone else did a little more.
There's been an awakening.
Have you felt it? I doubt it.
You felt it, dealt it. That's the Jedi motto.
So those are the walkouts.
Oh my God, that was abrupt.